The wind screamed over the plains like a coyote with a broken leg. Dust rose in curtains, curling around fence posts and rattling the dry bones of a gate that hung off its hinges. The Coulter ranch hadn't seen rain in 8 months, nor kindness. In twice that, chickens were long gone. The barn sagged like a tired drunk. And Wade Coulter, once a proud man with proud horses, stood beside the lifeless body of his last mare. He didn't cry, didn't curse, just clenched his jaw, slid the silver, bit from her mouth, and tied it to his saddle horn. The saddle was empty now, slung over the back of a half-dead mule. His boots sank into the parched earth as he mounted up, the sun blazing like a furnace overhead. He rode out slow, toward the auction yard in Deadwood Hollow, not to make a trade to. Salvage survival. The town stank of wet hay, whiskey, and sweat. Men barked at each other over cattle, horses, and crates of rusted tools. Flies swarmed over everything. The auctioneer's voice echoed like a bullet ricocheting off canyon walls. Wade kept his hat low and his eyes lower. Every step his mule took was like dragging Shane through a crowd that remembered who he used to be. A rancher with 50 head of wild mustangs. A woman with a laugh that could melt frost. A dream that hadn't yet caught fire and burned to the ground. Coulter? A fat man with a gold tooth leaned off the corral rail. Ain't seen you in a coon's age. Thought you were dead. Wade didn't answer. You looking to buy, or beg? He kept walking. Inside the auction pen, wild-eyed horses kicked at the fences. Men shouted prices. A teenager got knocked flat trying to calm a bucking gelding. Wade approached a lean, dapple-gray mare. She was solid, good chest, scarred from work, but strong. How much? He asked the handler. The man laughed. You couldn't buy her tail, Coulter. Prices are up. You're a ghost around here. Try the junk pile. Wade stepped back. Fished into his coat. He had 1 coin left silver, dulled and warm from his palm. Not enough. Not nearly. He turned to leave, and that's when he saw her. She wasn't supposed to be there, standing in the far corner of a livestock pen, not with horses, not with cattle. Just her. Arms wrapped tight, clothes hanging off her like drapes off a nail. Barefoot, filthy. Eyes like storm clouds. Wade stopped. She looked no older than 19. Hair like tangled corn silk. Her face was bruised, but something in the set of her jaw said she still had fire left in her dot. As he stared, she moved toward the fence. Slow, careful. Then she whispered, Please, take me instead. The world seemed to freeze. Men nearby turned. Laughter rippled. One said, Did that rag doll just talk? She didn't flinch. Wade stepped closer. What did you say? She licked dry lips. Voice rasping, but steady. I can work, cook, clean, feed stock. I don't eat much. Just don't leave me here. Who are you? No one. Just a girl in the wrong place too long. Wade stared at her, then glanced toward the handlers. One man, tall and ugly, with a busted nose and a long rifle. On his back, stormed forward. That girl ain't for sale. Wade didn't blink. She just was. The man's hand drifted toward his hip. You got a problem, mister? Wade asked, his voice turning iron. The man spat at the ground. That's my property. You branding people now? She works here. Bought fair. Signed contract. The girl shook her head. I didn't sign nothing. They pulled me off the trail 2 years ago. Shut up. The man snapped. That's when Wade's fingers drifted toward his own hip. Real slow, like a man stirring a snake from a barrel. Voices quieted. The auctioneer paused mid-bid. The tall man squared off. You don't want this fight, Coulter. I'm not buying a fight, Wade said. I'm buying a person's last chance. Then you just bought yourself a grave. The tension snapped like dry timber. Guns half drawn, dust swirling. All it'd take was a sneeze for blood to stain the dirt. But the sheriff stepped in. Enough. He was old, leather-skinned, and tired. Wade, if you're planning to take that girl, she's got to go willingly. And you better sign a witness slip. Wade looked at her. She nodded once. No hesitation. Just desperation wrapped in ragged dignity. I'm going, she said. Anywhere but here. Back at the mule, she didn't speak. Just climbed up behind him like she'd done it before. Light as a feather. Quiet as fog. They rode out into the dying sun. Town falling behind like a fever dream. After a mile, Wade finally asked, Got a name? She hesitated. Elara. That real? Close enough? You know how to ride. I know how not to fall. He almost smiled. Almost. That night they camped under the stars. She sat cross-legged by the fire, chewing jerky with hollow cheeks. Wade handed her a bedroll. She stared at it like it was gold. You ever slept outside? He asked. I used to dream about it, she said softly. Freedom smells like pine and smoke. He looked at her bruises, at the blood on her ankle, at the way she tucked her arms around herself, like she expected to be hit. You're safe now. He muttered. She didn't respond. Instead, she laid down, eyes wide open, watching the stars. Wade turned over, facing the fire. But in the crackle of flame, he heard her whisper, Thank you, stranger. And in the silence that followed, something shifted. Not in the wind, not in the camp, in him. The morning came soft, the kind that tricks the bones into thinking peace might last. The sun rose behind the buttes in long golden streaks, painting the land like it hadn't burned a dozen ranches dry. Wade, Coulter stirred the coals and poured water into a dented kettle. Elara sat across the fire, knees drawn to her chest, watching him the way wild things watch traps. She hadn't slept. Not really. You hungry? Wade asked. She nodded, barely. He tossed a strip of salted pork on the pan. It sizzled weakly like. Even the fire was too tired for this world. He handed her a tin plate. She hesitated, then reached out too fast. Like she thought he'd change his mind. He didn't say a word. They rode in silence for most of the day. The mule trotted slow, giving Wade time to think, and Elara time to stare off at nothing in particular. Sometimes she'd hum under her breath. It wasn't a tune he knew, just a sound that kept the ghosts from crowding her mind. You ever work a ranch before? He asked finally. Not a good one. You know fences, feed, gardens. I know how to not get kicked by a bull and how to stretch beans into a week of stew. He gave her a long glance. Good, he said. That's more than half the cowboys I ever hired. They reached the Coulter place before dusk. The mule creaked to a stop in front of a leaning house, its roof sagging in the middle like a broken back. The barn was barely standing. A swing still hung from a porch beam dry-rotted rope, swaying gently in the breeze. This is yours? Elara asked. Was. Still is. Might not be much, but it's more than nothing. She didn't scoff. Didn't mock. She looked at it like it was a palace. The next few days passed like water over cracked stone. Slow, uneven, healing in the quietest. Wade watched as Elara moved around the ranch like she belonged. She wasn't graceful, but she was efficient. She mended feed sacks with twine, raked the garden beds, even taught the mule to stop biting. Once, she tried to fix a loose board on the barn. When the hammer slipped and blood welled up on her palm, she didn't cry out, just sucked in her breath, and wrapped it with a scrap of cloth. Why didn't you call me? Wade asked. I've had worse. How much worse? She paused. Enough that I know the difference between a wound and a warning. He didn't ask again. One night, thunder rolled in from the east. A storm broke over the plains, soaking the world in wet blackness. Wade found her in the barn, curled in the hay. Hay, eyes wide with panic. She was shaking, whispering something. He knelt beside her. "Elara? I thought I heard the lock." Her voice was brittle. "There ain't no lock here. You're free." She buried her face in her knees. "I don't know what that means yet." He didn't touch her, just sat beside her until the storm passed. 2 days later, the food ran low. Wade took her hunting. She didn't blink at the rifle, just held it steady, watched him shoot a rabbit clean through the eye. When he offered her the next shot, she hesitated. Then took it. The rabbit didn't suffer. "Where'd you learn?" he asked. She didn't meet his eyes. "Back where I came from, you either learn to shoot or learn to beg." He didn't press, but something changed that day. She smiled small, crooked, like it didn't quite fit her face yet. Wade noticed. And he noticed more. The way she looked out for the mule, even talking to it like a friend. The way she checked the garden before going to sleep. The way she sometimes sang under her breath while stirring the pot over the fire. Not much. Just enough to stir the ashes inside him. He started telling her stories. Little things. About the ranch when it was alive. About his wife Claire and the baby they almost had. "She'd have liked you," he said one night. Elara glanced up from the fire. "Your wife?" He nodded. "She was kind and stubborn. Kept this place running even when I wanted to give up." "You don't talk about her much. Talking hurts." Elara looked away. "So does silence." The next morning, Wade found flapjacks on a plate. Burnt, rock-hard. She stood there, arms folded, waiting. He took a bite, grimaced. "Careful," she said, straight-faced. "They might try to escape," Wade snorted. A real laugh, short and sharp like a whip crack. "Next time," she added, "I'll try adding flour." He laughed harder. So did she. That night, the winds changed. As Wade was mending a fence line, he paused. Looked toward the ridge. A rider. Just one. Watching from a distance. Then gone. Wade said nothing to Elara, but he checked his rifle twice before going to sleep. Later that night, under the stars, Elara whispered, "You're waiting for trouble." "I always am." "Because of me?" "No," he said slowly. "Because of the men who think they still own you." Silence. Then she said, "I'm not scared anymore." "You should be." "I was scared for years. Didn't help. Might as well be angry now." Wade nodded, respect in his eyes. "Good." As the moon rose high and the prairie grew quiet, Elara rolled onto her side, watching the firelight flicker. Across his face, "Wade? Yeah? Why did you take me that day?" He didn't answer at first. Then, quiet as falling ash, he said, "Because I saw someone fighting not to be invisible." Elara's eyes welled. She blinked the tears away, letting one fall, just one. The sun rose sharp and white over Coulter's ranch. Dew clung to the fence posts like a secret. Elara was already outside, hoe in hand, sleeves rolled up, sweat on her brow before breakfast. Wade stood on the porch, arms crossed, watching her. She looked whole, like the land was slowly knitting her spirit back together. But something in his gut tightened. That quiet tension that came just before a stampede or a storm. He couldn't shake the image of the rider on the ridge. They sat on the porch steps sharing boiled coffee and leftover beans when the sound came. Hooves. 4 of them. Fast. Sharp. Elara froze mid-bite. Wade stood slow, hand drifting toward the rifle, leaning by the door. A second later, 3 men rode into the yard. The leader tall, sunburnt, and grinning like a fox swung off his horse. Mighty fine morning, Coulter. Got yourself a ranch hand, I hear. Wade. Didn't blink. Who's asking? Name's Corbin. This here's Lyle and Duke. We came for what's ours. Behind him, Ilara went pale. You boys lost? Wade asked flatly. Corbin tilted his head. Nah, we're here for the girl. Contract says she's mine until she turns 21. Papers legal. Signed by a man who owned her fair. Didn't know you could own people, Wade growled. You can when the law don't care. She's not leaving. She don't get to say she's property. Wade stepped forward. Say that word again, and I'll knock your teeth so far down your throat you'll be chewing with your spine. Corbin chuckled. Now, don't be like that. We could make this civil. Wade raised his rifle. We're past civil, he said, dotted. Happened fast. Corbin's hand went to his belt. Wade fired first. The shot grazed Corbin's arm, spinning him around. Lyle pulled his revolver, but Wade ducked behind the porch post and returned fire. Boom. 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 Dust flew. Boards splintered. Ilara screamed and dropped to her knees beside the garden bed. The mule kicked its stall open and bolted across the field. Wade reloaded. Heart pounding, sweat mixing with blood on his cheek from a flying shard of wood. One of. The men Duke rushed the side of the house, trying to flank him. Wade shifted his weight, rolled across the porch, and fired blind. Thud. Duke dropped. Ilara was gone from the yard. Inside the barn, Ilara gripped the rifle Wade had taught her to use. Her hands shook, but her eyes were steel. Footsteps approached. Lyle. She crouched behind the hay bales, heart hammering. He stepped inside, cursing, shotgun swinging. She didn't breathe. Then she remembered Wade's voice. Breathe out when you squeeze. Let the shot go like a secret. She stood up. Lyle turned. Too slow. Boom. He crashed to the floor. Ilara fell. To her knees, chest heaving, bile rising in her throat. But she didn't look away. Wade limped into the barn 10 minutes later, clutching his ribs. Corbin had fled, leaving 2 dead men behind. He looked at her. She looked at the rifle. Then at him. I didn't want to. I know. I had to. I know. They buried the men under the old cottonwood near the back fence. No words. No prayers. Elara scrubbed the blood from her arms with creek water until her skin turned red. Wade didn't stop her. That night, she sat by the fire, knees to her chest. You think he'll come back? She asked. Wade nodded. Not alone. Not quiet. I can't run again. You won't have to. She looked at him, voice cracking. I wasn't supposed to survive this long. He didn't answer. Just stoked the fire and set his rifle. Beside her bedroll, days passed. No riders, no lawmen. Ilara cooked, cleaned, mended the fence Wade broke in the shootout. She didn't speak much, but her steps grew lighter, her shoulders straighter. Wade sat on the porch most evenings, sharpening tools, watching the horizon. She'd sit near him, whittling a spoon or humming. One night, he asked, Why do you sing that song? She blinked. What song? The one under your breath. You always hum it when you're scared? She looked down. My mother sang it. Before they took me. He leaned forward. Do you remember her? Only her hands. Softest thing I ever knew. She looked at him then. Really looked. You remind me of her? The way you talk when you think I'm not listening. Wade smiled faintly. What do I say? Things like, don't spook her, Coulter. She's healing. He laughed quietly. Didn't think you heard that. I did. 2 nights later, a rider came, but not the one they feared. It was the sheriff. He climbed off slow, worn eyes, wrinkled face, a paper in his hand. I heard there was a shootout here, he said. 3 bodies, 2 buried, 1 still breathing. Wade didn't speak. Sheriff nodded at Alara. Girl, you got a name? Elara, she said, standing straight. Got a contract out for you. Belongs to a man named Corbin. Claims you're bonded labor. Legal. Wade stepped between them. She was stolen. Not hired. There's a difference. Sheriff sighed. That's not how the court sees it. I've got proof, Elara said suddenly. She rushed inside. Came back with a small folded paper, dirty, faded, torn. Her birth certificate. Found in Corbin's pack. After the fight. It listed her name. Her real town. Her real parents. The sheriff unfolded it slowly, eyes scanning. Well, I'll be damned, he muttered. This girl was kidnapped. That paper Corbin's waving means nothing. He looked at Wade, then back at her. You're free, Miss Alara. Legally. Fully. She didn't move. Just stood there, shaking. I'm free? He nodded. Then tipped his hat. Y'all be careful now. That man'll come back, papers or not. As he rode off, Wade looked at her. And Alara collapsed to her knees. Not from fear, from relief. That night, Wade sat beside her under the stars. Her hands curled in her lap, dirt under her nails, and peace on her face for the first time. All right? He asked. I think so, she whispered. You did good. I was so sure I was going to die out here. He chuckled. You almost did. A few times, she smiled. But I didn't. No, you didn't. She looked at him, light flickering in her eyes. Why did you fight for me? All this time? He paused. Then said softly, because every soul deserves one person to fight for them. She reached out and took his hand. The morning air was sweet with sage and spring. Dew hung on the fence posts like tiny blessings. Birds returned to sing. The land, once starved, seemed to breathe again, and so did Alara. She sat by the garden beds in her patchwork dress, fingers gently turning the soil. Green shoots pushed up like little promises. Behind her, the house no longer sagged like it used to. The barn had new boards. The porch steps had been rebuilt, one careful nail at a time. Wade watched her from the porch, sipping black coffee. His side still ached where a bullet had once kissed bone, but the pain had faded into something manageable. Like her. Like healing. Days turned to weeks. Neighbors came by, cautious at first, drawn by whispers of Wade Coulter taking in a girl with no name. But when they saw the garden, the repaired fence, the soft look in Wade's eyes, they said nothing. Just tipped hats and moved on. One old woman dropped off a sack of flour with no note. Elara baked biscuits that night. Wade said they were better than his late wife's. She didn't believe him, but she blushed all the same. They were sitting by the fire one night when she finally asked it. Do you think people can be born again? Wade leaned back in his chair, pipe unlit, fingers rubbing his chin. Not like the preachers say, not overnight, but maybe a little at a time. She looked at the stars. I used to think my name didn't matter, that it was just something. They called me before everything fell apart. He stayed quiet. She continued, but now I want it to mean something. I want to be someone. Not just survive. Live. You already are. No. She turned to him. I want to be someone worth fighting for. Not just someone rescued. You are always worth it, Wade said. The world just didn't see it. The next day, they rode into town. Together. Side by side. The mule had been traded in for a new bay gelding. Elara sat upright in the saddle, hair braided back, wearing a clean cotton blouse and a leather belt Wade had punched new holes into to fit her waist. As they tied their horses outside the general store, people stared, but not cruelly. Just curious. Inside, Wade bought nails, oil, and flour. Elara browsed the bookshelf in the corner. Can I help you? the storekeeper asked. She hesitated, then pointed to a worn copy of Leaves of Grass. Walt Whitman? The woman said. Didn't take you for a poet. Not yet, Elara whispered. But I'm learning. Wade smiled as he paid for it. They were halfway home when they heard it. Hooves. Fast. From behind. Elara turned, breath catching. Wade swung around in his saddle, rifle. Across his lap, Corbin, back again. This time, he was alone. No smug smile. No paperwork. Just a rifle and a face carved from rage. You think you won? He snarled. You think this is over? Wade didn't answer. You stole from me. Corbin screamed. She was never yours, Wade growled. And if you've got an ounce of sense, you'll ride on. Corbin's hand twitched toward his holster. Elara stepped forward. No, she said. Calm. Strong. I'll speak. Wade reached to stop her, but froze when he saw her face. Unshaken. Resolute. Elara Gray, she said clearly. Daughter of Michael and Maria Gray. Taken from Sweetwater Hollow at the age of 10. Kidnapped. Held. Beaten. But not broken. Corbin's. Face paled. I'm not yours. I never was. And if you come near this ranch again, it'll be the last thing you do. Her hand rested on the rifle slung over her back. Corbin hesitated, spit on the ground. And turned. He rode off without another word. Wade exhaled. You didn't even flinch. I did, she whispered. Just not where he could see. That night, they sat by the fire again. But this time, something hung different in the air. Wade reached into his coat and pulled out a box. Small, wooden. Warm. He didn't open it, just handed it to her. She looked at him. What is it? My wife's wedding ring. She wanted me to give it to someone who'd fight for a better life. Someone who could build something from nothing. Elara stared at the box. You don't have to, he added quickly. I want you to know. You don't owe me anything. She opened it. The gold ring caught the firelight, flickering. Like a promise. I'm not sure I'm ready, she whispered. I'll wait. I'm not sure I know what love is yet. I'll teach you. She looked at him with tears in her eyes, then took the ring, not to wear, just to hold, for now. Month passed, then 2. The ranch bloomed. Neighbors came again, not to stare, but to offer help, to trade, to share stories. And every time someone asked Wade who she was, he'd say, That's Elara Coulter. She's the one who brought this place back to life. Elara stood in front of the church steps on a Sunday morning, sun in her hair, hands folded in front of her apron. Children ran past, chasing a ball made of cloth and twine. Someone asked her to speak at the town picnic. She hesitated. Then smiled, and said yes. He came for a horse. He left with a reason to live. She was meant to be silent. But she found a voice stronger than bullets. Out here in the Wild West, not every war is fought with guns. Some are fought with kindness, with hands that heal, and with names worth dying for. Subscribe for more stories of grit, grace, and the unbreakable human spirit.